You know, it's been a while since I've read a book. How long has it been, actually? It's a very specific watch. Well, I guess I could check out the bookshelf, see if there's anything I could read. Alright, yikes. This, seems to be more shelf than book here. Oh, to be fair, I don't think they've made enough books for that entire space to be filled yet. Let me just clean out some of the cobwebs there. Okay, let's take a look. Well, I guess if there's truth to my friends or my power, then this isn't the most, inspiring tale. No, I hate both sheep and robots. Nope, I only read books with an even number of vehicular manslaughter scenes. Either do 0 or 2, not 1. Don't leave me wanting more. Ugh. I need something classic, something new that I've never looked at or read before. Something that's not... I don't know. Stupid, I don't know what I was thinking. I can't play a book. Oh my god, yes, finally. Real art. Oh, thank god. Yeah, Fahrenheit 451 was right. Burn the rest of this. You know the whole generational cohort thing? Boomers, Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, all of that. In general, I think there's truth to the whole concept, how someone born 15 or 20 years apart from someone else probably has different attitudes, a different understanding of culture, and probably grew up doing pretty different things. Where it gets messy, I think, is when you try to make standardized cutoff dates for when one generation ends and another one begins. As someone born in 1996, I'm right on the line between Millennial and Gen Z, and there are aspects of both generations that I identify with. I remember when social media wasn't really a phenomenon yet, but I still did have the internet at a pretty young age. I rented movies and games at Blockbuster, but not for long because it was quickly replaced by faster and more accessible alternatives. Okay, so why am I talking about this in a video about a strategy guide for Kingdom Hearts? Because I think another one of those features of the transitional time between Y and Z, albeit a less widespread one, is the faint memory of the strategy guide being the supreme method for getting information about whatever game you were playing. Especially so in a time when the internet was not quite as sophisticated as it is now, on top of being too young to really be trusted to use it on your own. I don't really know how it is nowadays. I'm pretty sure babies come out of the womb with an iPad now, so they likely have an Instagram at 6 months. And I mean 6 months into pregnancy, like you're slacking if you don't establish your brand while you're still fetal. This is not judgment for the record, because I came out playing Tetris on my Game Boy Color, different screens for different human beings. But really, I've been playing video games since I was 3 years old, and for a chunk of my childhood, if I ever got a video game for Christmas or a birthday, a lot of the time my mom got me the strategy guide along with it. I'd say more than half the time I never actually needed help through the game, but 100% of the time I looked at the strategy guide because they were always cool to look at. I'm pretty sure they're still made in some capacity these days, but I think most of us would be kidding ourselves to say that they're more convenient or economically sensible than just looking up the part you need info about on YouTube. I think the absolute newest guide I own is for the original Red Dead Redemption, but I never used it because the game came out in 2010 and I was already neck deep in internet detritus for about half a decade at that point. Nonetheless, it's still cool to have these physical relics, if only for the artwork and the novelty of it. And bear in mind, and I guess I'm dating myself again here, but when I was a little kid, the best way to show my friends pictures from my favorite games, barring one of us going to the other's house, was to bring the strategy guide to school and pore over it during recess. It wasn't like we could just search stuff from the games on our phones, partly because we didn't have phones yet, and if we did, they would have been Motorola Razrs. It took 15 button presses just to type one letter. So yeah, I was always a big fan of these guides, but I have a feeling you can guess which one I spent the most time obsessing over. You might be looking at my copy here, noticing the general wear and tear and missing Donald page for some reason, and think, wow Pat, you didn't take very good care of it. And yeah, about that, this is my good copy. The original one, yeah, I left this one out on my grandma's swing set because of course I had this with me when I was playing outside as a kid. Why would you leave the house without it? And it got caught in a rainstorm.
Oh no!
Book. I was pretty devastated when I had that realization, but it managed to endure for the most part, though I'm missing a good chunk of the beginning and end of it. I would also draw and take notes in it, which makes sense to a 6-year-old, but breaks the Geneva Convention if you do it over the age of 11. I guess that's supposed to be a white mushroom holding a purse or satchel of some sort. Oh, yeah, very good Dalmatian fella. Maybe go put that out in the rain again, sport. Yeah, for these reasons, I'll be using my more intact and less vandalized copy for this video. Also, the word my in that sentence is Well, it's possibly a lie. There's like an 80% chance that I stole this from one of my cousins, but I mean, I don't think they need it anymore. So let's take a look at this thing. First off, and I know this isn't unique to the book, but I don't know when else I'll have an opportunity to talk about it, I love this cover. I think my favorite in the series is probably the cover for KH3, but this one is a close second. It's hard to beat 3 just for how it includes everyone and that beautiful sky, but I think KH1's is the most stylistic one. Because of this cover, I've always associated the game with this dark, moody blue color in my mind, fittingly considering it's one of the moodier games in the series, as I've talked about at length now. Also, the big Kingdom Hearts moon is in the background, so what are they all looking at? I guess Riku didn't get the memo. If he needed a hint as to who's going to be an antagonistic little man-child for most of the game, look no further. Also, where are they? The architecture kind of looks like something from Hollow Bastion or maybe even Neverland, but you've also got this gargoyle creeping in the corner, and those are from Halloween Town. I guess there's not really meant to be an answer to that, but it kind of looks like it's happening in the same physical place that the KH3 cover takes place in. Okay, let's really get into it now. Right up front, one of my favorite parts of this guide were these character models alongside all of the abilities that the party members learn. I loved drawing video game characters as a kid, so having these big images of them up front was always very convenient. Or sometimes I'd just trace over them and pretend that I had talent. And since we're still in the beginning of the book, here's an example of something that these guides were especially useful for. That little questionnaire in the Dive to the Heart is never explained in-game, nor does it ever tell you what your answers mean beyond your journey starting at dawn or midday or night. I pretty much always went with the top options because I always thought the early game was the hardest, especially before you get Cure. Of course, the leveling shifts once you hit level 50, and you can reliably beat the game right around that point, so it often doesn't matter all too much. But a lot of people grew up having no idea what the questions meant or what they did, but this guide broke down all of the different combinations for how you level, so I felt very in the know. And speaking of learning things about the game that I didn't know, I realized when looking through the book that a couple of chests from the 90 Obscure Things video are highlighted in this extra section towards the back of the book. I knew it was unlikely that I had stumbled onto some of these by dumb luck, and sure enough, this section highlights a couple of hard to find ones like the prizes in the Rabbit Hole or the hourly Clock Tower prizes in Neverland. In general though, I tried to avoid spoiling myself on things I hadn't seen in the game yet, though sometimes I'd be flipping through and see something like the face from World of Chaos and think, like, good god, did I imagine that? What's nice though is that even if you read the text in the more plot-heavy sections of the game, the author took care to not be like, yeah, Donald and Goofy abandon you, or Sora turns into a Heartless. Instead, it's just Beast is your party member for now, or you'll be controlling a shadow for a few minutes. And that safeguarding against spoilers also extended to images in the enemies section in the back. You know, you might want to look at something while you're halfway through the game, maybe you want to know what Heartless drops a certain synthesis material, and you see Kurziza here with this big, dumb, balloony question mark, and it fills you with intrigue and also relief that you didn't ruin it for yourself. While we're in this Heartless section, I recall there being not too many mistakes throughout the book, but I remember catching a couple of them in the back here, like the artwork for the Riku fights being swapped or some enemies being labeled as bosses. I mean, who could forget that grueling boss battle against the Yellow Opera? It's forgivable though, they're just graphical errors, plus there's an insane amount of detail put into these entries here, like here's the stats for all of the iterations of Shadows throughout the game, or how about giving the HP amount for the different pieces of the Battleship Heartless, despite the fact that nobody would even notice or care to point that out until literally right now in this video, 17 years later. Let's see, what else do I love about this thing? Oh, the artwork and these banners at the top. It's not stuff that's unique to the guide, but I love how it's used here. It makes the pages so much more vibrant and interesting to look at. I also always like the little checklist you get at the start of each world that kind of gives you a heads up on how long the level's gonna be, and it only further helped build a sense of progression as you accomplish each task. Like, good god, look at Deep Jungle, this world's longer than 0.2. Oh, you know what else I like? These little info bubbles with Jiminy Cricket that pop up here and there. I just like his stupid little face. He's like, hey fella, I know something you don't know. Read on for more information. Also, I wish I showed off more of these maps when I was talking about world design in my ranking video, because these pages here really illustrate how interconnected a world like Traverse Town is. Plus, I think it's cool to see all the rooms drawn up and laid out next to each other. But I think my absolute favorite aesthetic choice in this guide is whenever there's a boss fight, you're flipping through these pages with these light backgrounds and little bios for characters from Disney movies, and then bam, you see one of these and you can practically hear the boss music playing in your head already. It's so foreboding and intimidating and such a visual contrast to the rest of the guide. It looks like these sections are bursting through the pages and trying to escape from the walkthrough, like it's ripping a hole in the space-time book continuum. So when you get to the end of the world and see that the last portion of it is just like 5.5 pages of non-stop spooky boss fight write-ups, that's how you know stuff's about to get real. Also, like, what the hell is this font doing? It is absolutely out of control. I always thought it was weird though how some boss fights were kind of sidelined and not given the typical treatment, like the Ice Titan or the very last Ansem fight. It's almost like everything regarding the main story needed to be fit in the first 200 pages, so they had to condense some of it, but I don't know. The last major feature I'll highlight here is this sticker section in the back. First of all, I have no idea how I had the restraint to not use these even in my second copy. In fact, I definitely did not resist the urge to use them, as I, for some reason, used one of the stickers from my original book to mark my memory card. Why did I put it there? Why Dalmatian number 98? It's best not to ask questions about what motivates a 6-year-old because they act purely on instinct and are beings of darkness, not unlike the Heartless themselves. But second, I never had another guide that gave you stickers. I mean, that's awesome. Video games and stickers, those were like my two major voting issues growing up, and none of the candidates ever included either in their platform, so I always abstained from voting. Unfortunately, even the good copy of the book is missing the poster where the stickers actually go. I guess that's one thing that my cousin managed to escape with before I stole/borrowed the book indefinitely. You can see on the back cover, though, that each world had a section where you could mark off what Dalmatians and Trinities you had found. I always thought it was such a cool way for the guide makers to go the extra mile and make that first run through the game feel even more special and consequential. And I mean, you got all of this for $15 back in the day. That's like $45 less than KH3 and only $15 more than Union Cross. Oh, by the way, did any of you guys ever play this PK Out of the Shadows game? Apparently it came out a few months after KH1 on both PS2 and GameCube, and I remember seeing the ad for it here and I think somewhere else that I can't recall, but I never actually once saw it on shelves anywhere. I'd be interested to know if it was any good, if anyone out there ever actually got their hands on it. That's really all of the major stuff I wanted to show. Overall, this book was just as much a part of my early Kingdom Hearts experience as the game itself, but I think it actually goes a little deeper than that. You know, growing up, I always liked writing dumb little stories, a lot of them based on video games that I liked at the time, and eventually I ended up getting a minor in creative writing, but if you couldn't tell from the intro to the video, I've never really been a big book guy. Very rarely did I read books for fun growing up, and very rarely did I read them when they were assigned, but that's another can of worms.
Homework?
What I did do a lot, though, was play games, and I think that's really the true source of any creativity I have, as well as my appreciation for language and writing. Because despite how video games have been knocked by snobs and crusty old people since their emergence into pop culture, they are still art. They're written works beyond just code, and I don't think it's just wishful thinking or super radical to refer to them as, yes, literature. I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings, but why the gatekeeping? Why the holier-than-thou attitude? If a video game and all of the paratext that goes along with it, like this guide, got a younger me to learn new words or understand new concepts, is that not a net positive? These things were monumental in shaping my understanding of storytelling and building up my vocabulary. Like, I learned all sorts of words from Kingdom Hearts 1. Bizarre, intertwined, vessel, and that's just from the first few hours of the game. And I can't even count how many times I bothered my parents to ask them what a word in the guide meant. Like treacherous pursuit, solemn edifice, you're not getting that quality of vocab from first grade, no sir. So, Dan Burlew, if you're out there, thank you for filling this book with your words and for helping me build my case that video games aren't always just mind-numbing garbage, only like 60% of the time. Howdy friends, thanks for watching. I know this was a bit different than the usual fare here, so let me know what you thought of it. I kind of had that throwaway line in my world rankings about doing a video on the official strategy guide, and then I thought, well, actually yeah, I really could just do something on that. I'm also working on something concerning Kingdom Hearts 3 at the moment, but I wanted to put something out in the meantime while I write that and gather the footage I'll need. This was a pretty specific video topic, so I hope it was at least somewhat interesting. I figure it either gave you a look at something you'd never seen before, or it brought back some memories if you also grew up with the book like I did. Once again, thanks as always for tuning in, and if you're so inclined, leave a blue thumb of approval and hit subscribe so that I know that I have worth in this world. To most of you, I bid you a fond farewell, but to the decrepit windbags out there who say video games are not art, I say...
Later, losers!
Excuse me, are you looking for a game of some sort, sir? May I interest you in Nicktoons Unite?